Welcome to the discussion Floating in the Making as part of the Dublin Dance Festival 2020 digital capsule. My name is Hanna Slattne. I'm a dramaturg based in Ireland outside Belfast. And I have been working with Catherine Young Dance Company since 2018 on the project State of Exception. I am also part of the team responding to the challenging and ever-changing circumstances in making Floating on a Dead Sea. With me, I have Catherine Young and parts of the creative team. We have Luca Truffarelli, who is a freelance photographer, filmmaker and artist based in Dublin, and who has worked with Catherine Young Dance on numerous projects since 2014. We have Vanessa Guevarra, a dancer choreographer specializing in contemporary and traditional Mexican and African diaspora dance, originally from Mexico and now based in London. Vanessa initially worked with Catherine on State of Exception. We have Salma Ataya, originally from Ramallah in Palestine, where she danced with Sareyyet Dance Company and was instrumental in connecting Catherine with the Ramallah Contemporary Dance Festival. Since 2016, she's based in Limerick and started working with Catherine on Welcoming the Stranger in the same year. And we also have our guest choreographer, Amir Sabra, based in Nablus, Palestine. Amir is a dancer and choreographer and director of Stereo 48 Dance Company. In 2017, he choreographed his first piece, Hip Hop Geese, and is currently doing a residency in France, working on a new show, Journey to Jerusalem, for Stereo 48. And of course, choreographer Catherine Young. Catherine established her company, Catherine Young Dance, in 2011 and has produced many critically acclaimed shows such as Ultima Thule, Welcoming the Stranger, and most recently, State of Exception. We will be talking about the ever-changing development process of the making of Floating on a Dead Sea, which was due to be performed at this year's dance festival in Dublin. However, before we dive into the conversation, we want to share the trailer for the project with you. The trailer is 3 minutes long.
طايش على البحر الميت، طايش على البحر الميت، طايش في البحر الميت، طايش على البحر الميت، طايش على البحر الميت، طايش على سطح البحر الميت.
So Catherine, tell us, how did you end up in Palestine?
So in 2016, I was asked to make a piece as part of Féile Fáilte by Fergus O'Connor, and it was in the height of the refugee crisis. So I worked on a piece called Welcoming the Stranger, and as part of that, we worked with asylum seekers and refugees in Ireland. And in Kerry, we had the privilege of meeting a guy called Ahmed from Gaza, and in the piece, we were embracing dance styles from all different cultures, and he taught us a Dabka piece, which ended up in the show. And then when I was remounting the show for stage, Salma, we were introduced to Salma, so we invited Salma to join the piece, and that work was invited to the Ramallah Contemporary Dance Festival in 2017. So 12 of us went out to work with Sareyyet Dance Company, and we performed work in Jerusalem and Ramallah. And I think the trip changed everything for me anyway. I'd never experienced anything like going to Palestine, both the amazing kindness and wanted people, but also kind of the situation there. And you think you know, and then you go and you realize how little you actually know. So it's stuck with me for the last 3 years, and it's been hard to forget, and it's hard to unsee and unknow what you experience there. So I've just been reading and researching and reading, and I guess the way I kind of understand it, the world is to make work about it. So last year, myself and Luca went back to, I guess, just to know more and to see more and to learn a bit more, and also to shoot some footage to have the visuals of the place.
And just before I turn to Luca to hear about your experience, just how does this project fit in with the other project that you have been doing recently, do you feel?
State of Exception, you mean? Yeah, I mean they're both linked. Originally, when I was making State of Exception, it kind of came out of the Palestinian experience directly, because they're in a state of exception as the folks in direct provision. So the two, originally when I was making the State of Exception, it was to be about states of exception in general. But kind of once I dove into the show, it was really clear that each thing needed their own piece. There was so much to say about direct provision. And to even attempt to make a piece of work about Palestine needs a lot of time and a lot of care. So I separated them out, but they are in essence about the same thing. It is about human rights and about when your ability to make rights and to self-determine is taken away from you. So the pieces are influenced by each other, and even in some of the choreography in State of Exception, there are movement sequences taken from my experience in Palestine, and even the set, the wires across the set in State of Exception kind of were inspired by Hebron and the wire meshing that crosses the streets there. So the pieces are quite linked.
Luca, what was your experience of this trip to Palestine from an artist's point of view, and how did it affect what you wanted to capture?
I don't know if makes a huge difference to be an artist or not an artist. When you go into such these beautiful places, wherever you see them, wherever you can capture, it stays even in your mind or in a sensor or on a camera or whatever. So I think the feeling is basically is the same. Of course, as a videographer, you can see something sometimes slightly different from the common viewer, but I don't think there is a massive difference in relation to like be an artist or not be an artist. Of course, when you go to these kind of places, you can have something that stays, I guess, forever. And this, I think, it's what these kind of places makes special.
Yeah. So that is a good point then to turn to Vanessa, because you were there, obviously, and your means of expression is also physical movement and dance. So I wanted to ask you how the trip to Palestine affected you.
I have to say that my first references I have of Palestine was from my colleague Salma, and also it wasn't framed with this about the conflict and the making of the piece. So I had a reference already. I have, which is not going for holiday, isn't it? As a researcher. So it affected me, I could say, in briefly, that when I arrived to London, I felt very lucky to be free, to be safe, to do what I wanted to do, to be able to move around. I think the confinement I found over there was, it affected me that way until I got here. I thought, wow, okay. It affected me as well in beautiful things, as always, just to be able to meet new people, the warmth of the people over there. It's in many ways.
Mm-hmm. You were also doing the dance class with the Palestinians. So can you tell us a bit about your engagement with the dancers over there?
Yes. Well, it's great. I'm a folkloric dancer before having the formal training. So I always appreciate that the folk dances or the people's dance as a form of strength and community, and I think in that sense, most of individuals around the world, we can kind of dance together or link together, or at least we know how does it feel. How does it feel? Dance as a community, something. So even if I'm not part of them, just grabbing the hands and trying to move, I know it means something already. I have noticed that around the world, every folk dance, as a professional dancer, I could say many of our approach would be like, oh, that looks very easy. But as a folkloric dancer, I can tell you, folk dances are so complex. It has a complexity in the in the simple things, because I think it has been developed by what they live, by their context, by what community makes. So it is something that physically I can repeat, but I will never be able to feel what that dance feels. When they go, bah, I could be like, okay, I do the same movement, but they have ingrained why do they? It's kind of a reason, and it might be not very conscious reason either. But they've been doing it years and years, and I arrive and copy things. So it is beautiful the way that they receive me in that way. That oh yeah, I can do it, and maybe they laugh if I cannot do it. I laugh myself as well. But it is very complex. So I always like to remark my full respect to when I approach to any folk dance from any part of the world. It goes the same way. I like when people come to my folk dance and respect them. It's hard. That is really hard. Yeah, very much fun.
Salma, you were not part of the trip to Palestine at the second trip, but you are obviously from Palestine. So I was just wondering, working with Catherine and the rest of the team and with Vanessa, what would you like to see in this piece? What would you want to share about your Palestinian roots with an Irish audience?
I would like to see less political and more normal. And when I say normal, I mean you're normal. So the normal life, that the thing in common between us and you. I would like to see that, because I think people then will understand it and will adjust it easily and fast. And I know that we live under occupation, so I don't think that we can ignore the political side in it. So I think it's the right way, for me, or what I would like to see, that to bring the political side not in a heavy way. So after showing all the normal stuff or all the common stuff between human being, then try to take away all the normal thing from them. And I think it just it's a simple way to for people to just understand that this is what they are taking is really simple. It's really basic. It's the basic human rights. So yeah, I always don't want to speak that much about politics, and I don't want to think about it a lot, and that's why it was for me a relief to be away a little bit from it, but in the same time, like really, we can't ignore that it's happening there and it exists. And I also would like people to see that, or to know that Palestine case is everyone case. So it's like anything is happening around the world, any case is happening anywhere, it affects all of us. So I really want people to understand what is happening in Palestine or anywhere in the world.
So I'm going to turn to Amir just to follow up on that from Salma, because you work as a choreographer in Palestine. So this is, I suppose, a question that leads us in specifically to the work that Catherine is doing. But I wondered if you have been thinking about what kind of process is a good process from a choreographer point of view when you are making work that is representing other people's story.
Well, actually, me myself, I have never done someone else's story. So normally I only work with Palestinian dances and about what a Palestinian or what Amir and the group are experiencing. But if I think about it, I think it will be important for me to be clear on how I want this story to be presented. Do I want to present it from my experience to this story, or from the people themselves? What is their point of view, how they would like to be presented? So it's important to know in the beginning and to determine how do I want to present this story. And of course I have to involve them, because we are talking about someone else's story, so he has or she has or they have to be a part of this story. It's important also to know how, I would like to know how they like to be presented. And of course, I want to know what other people think about this story and what I have noticed with this story, and also to work together to discover how this story have affected them physically in the first place if we are doing dance. So yeah, and I think I have to put all of this together in order to make a story that worth presenting.
Great answer. I think then I'm going to just pass that on to Catherine to think about, how are you thinking about the audience and what you want to offer them, what viewpoint, and how does that, how has that affected the process and the piece so far?
Yeah, I mean, originally when I decided to make the piece, it was I guess for an Irish audience or a Western audience to share what's going on, because I thought I knew, and then you go and then you realize how absolutely little you know, and how everything you see is skewed by the media and what they choose to tell you, and then of course that's controlled by the people in power. So part of the idea was to just to share a little bit of the truth with an Irish audience. So I was originally specifically making it for that. And it was interesting when I came back from Palestine and I was sharing some of the footage of interviews with Salma. She said to me, well, are you going to present this, in Ramallah? And I hadn't thought about that. I said, well, no, it's really for an Irish audience. And she said to me, well, I think people in Ramallah should see this, because I guess with Palestine, depending on where you live, your experience is different. If you're in area A, B, or C, if you're in area C, you're living under Israeli military rule, so your experience is going to be very different in Hebron to if you live in Ramallah. So possibly it may also be of value for Palestinians to see it too, because if I live in Dublin, I think my life is a particular way, but I don't necessarily know how others living in less fortunate conditions are living. So now I'm making it, I guess, with a more universal audience, that anybody should be able to watch this. And I think what's really important for me is that a Palestinian watching it has to be happy with how it's done, how it's presented, and that kind of with Salma at the beginning of the process, and it said to her, like, you've got to keep me on track and this on track, and if this goes any way out. And she's great because she's like, it's too dark, you need to lighten, so it's really important that the people whose story it is really guide it. And we did that with State of Exception. We brought the asylum seekers in the whole way through the process. And we were like, is this accurate? Is this truthful? Is this right? And they would tell us, yeah, no, it's to this, it's to that. So it's really critical that it's guided by the people whose story it's about, because at the end of the day, I keep wrestling with this question, like, what right do I have to make a piece about someone else's story? In one sense I don't, but another way, after going and you come back and, doing nothing about it didn't feel right either. It's like when you see and you can't unsee it. Like, the only way I know how to do something is to make a piece of work about it. And one thing I found in probably with the last couple of pieces I've made, that there's something in the process that's as valuable as the actual final product, because in the process, we went to Palestine, you're meeting people, you're building connections, you're building bridges. Hopefully you get to work with some of the folks over there. And then you're building these connections, and then you're talking to people when you come home, and kind of the people who begin to know the stories, it grows. So yes, it's for an audience that sees the piece, but actually there's something in the process, I think, that changes everybody and it makes you more empathetic. It's happened with State of Exception, and it's already begun to happen with this. So I think, I was wrestling with, should the piece be all Palestinians or should the piece be an entire Western cast? Because we did 2 weeks research, a week research back in Sherbrooke, and we had, half Palestinian dancers, half non. And people go through trauma, and I don't know what people have been through. So, there's that thing of how far can you push performers. Now, if I know they haven't lived there, maybe I can push a bit more, but then it's not their story. So this is back and forth. But I found with the previous pieces, when you actually have people from both sides, then you get more understanding, because if it's just Palestinians in the piece, you're missing an opportunity to share the experience with other dancers that can kind of maybe ripple out. So yeah, it's trying to have, I guess, maybe to build bridges both with audiences and with performers.
So I'll take that next question, then follow-on question to Salma, because Salma, you're in Ireland, you're working with Catherine on a piece about Palestine. So how do you feel as a dancer about being in this process?
I speak about my experience. I encourage people to speak about their experience. And I can't really I sometimes I go to Catherine and I tell her this is a little bit dark, this is but still it's her experience and I can't take it away from her, whether it was bad or good, all the feeling that she had in Palestine, all the experiences, so it's her own experience and she has the right to speak about it, and I'm a dancer in it. In the same time, I speak about my own experience and I embodied my experience. So, and also it's a Vanessa experience and Luca experience. So it's we all the process till now, it was all sharing. It's flowed together.
I'll turn to Luca. Because I was thinking about that your medium is film, and it doesn't there's lots of things it doesn't capture, like the smells and the tastes and just being there. So I suppose this is a question that I will take to direct to most of you, but it's about when you make a work about somewhere, how important it is to have been there.
Well, of course, it is really important when you go in some places like that, and then you record some stuff, and then you start to edit, and then you see the images, and then you remember the other senses, and then you feel like you're missing something because of that. The video that we use, for example, now that we edited, we left the real sound. We didn't introduce any other particular sound or music. So I guess the viewer has a more sense of the space, but of course the smells, and it's impossible to capture on camera. And of course, every time that I see an image or I see the image that I made, I remember the moment. That is difficult to translate to other people, of course, but well, that's why the people has to go there. I mean,
one thing, if I could jump in, one thing that we're finding that, you tend to be filming certain situations, but so much of the experience there is really positive, and people are amazing, and you're eating food and you're having a great time, and it never feels appropriate to whip out a camera and start filming that, because you're in the moment and you're enjoying it. So when we were watching the footage, we were like, oh, we have all this footage of the more difficult stuff and the more challenging stuff. But it's so important, for me anyway, to show both, because the positive side, I mean, you leave and it gets under your skin, and the experience there, it's not like anywhere else you've ever been, and you want to go back and you have to go back. But it's really hard to show that, because you were too busy enjoying the moment with the people and sharing food to be filming it. It didn't seem appropriate. So we found that challenge of how do you get that stuff in, and maybe that's where the live show has to take over in terms of getting the good stuff in.
Vanessa, just physically exploring someone else's story, and again, we've already spoken a little bit about the importance of being there and meeting people, being in their space. So I don't know if you have any more to say about that.
Yes, okay, so kind of in the same way that Salma was mentioning, let's say in an everyday situation, my body is being affected by the context. My body registers things, sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously. And while being in Palestine was exactly the same, but in a very extraordinary way, because everything was new. So I would say there are things that I'm not even conscious that my body took, that physicalized. By being there, my body behaves differently. I'm in a different, maybe emotional state, and the body starts behaving differently. And I might not have known back then, but when we got back to the studio, I would say with Catherine, if she, in the devising process, let's say, if she gives me a task, I will be going to that register that I already had from when I was there. And as Salma said, all my register obviously is as a foreigner that went to Palestine. It is as Vanessa, hold by my background, that is perceiving everything. I mean, yeah, I'm not doing a character I'm not playing a Palestine person. I'm just being me, Vanessa, with what I've been affected by being in Palestine. The beauty of it and the hard part of it comes out. I think we as dance makers, when we got a task, sometimes knowing and sometimes without knowing, things are so ingrained in your body, they just come pop out. And in terms of referencing, I mean, if Catherine asked me, what's your task about the feeling of the floating in the sea? Well, I have a clear feeling because I was there. I can imagine it as well, and I can make my own. Yeah, and it's valid as well. But yeah, it is important. It's another support. Yeah.
I wanted to first turn to Amir. Obviously, experienced much more widely than we have of making work within restrictions and confinement. So I wanted to ask you how you have faced that and dealt with that, and also what your particular restrictions and confinements are.
How to create with confinement and restrictions. For me, it's just the normal way of creating a piece, because since I started to create pieces, the restrictions and confinements were there. So it was normal for me. And how we face it, I think every Palestinian know how to face it, because we adapted to the situation. We've been living here forever. So it's not something new for us, actually, during this situation. We know how to deal with it, with the corona or the new situation that is the world are dealing with. And what is those restrictions, actually? I think the first restriction we face is being Palestinian itself. It restricted us some way, especially when we do our artwork, because the whole world tend to see us as a Palestinian, and they have stereotypes and ideas and back thoughts about us as a Palestinians. And whatever work you do, you will be always perceived politically, and they want to interpret the work in what they know about Palestine. especially when you perform in the West or in Europe or anywhere that is foreign, that they don't know the how is it to be in Palestine. So I think this is one of the main restrictions that we face when we do our art form. And of course, we add to that the physical, political restriction that we face. Because, for example, I work with dancers from different places in Palestine, and they hold different passports and different documents. And sometimes that make it complicated for us only to meet. For example, I hold a Palestinian travel document, so this doesn't allow me to work with the dancers that they hold Israeli passports. I cannot go there and practice with them in their studios. And if they want to come to practice in Ramallah, for example, which is a place in the middle which everyone can come, but they have to pass through checkpoints, and these checkpoints are not always open, and there is specific times and specific days that it's open. So this complicates our meetings. So I always say it's funny in that if we want to create a work in Europe, that will be easier for us than to create a piece in Palestine, even that we are living very close to each other. But this political restriction have complicated our meetings. Also, of course, we have our social and family restrictions. And here I want to say that, for example, in the head of my family or the head of most of the Palestinians, dancer, what comes to their mind when they hear the word dancer is a belly dancer, a girl that she is half naked. And this is something shameful to do. So this is what a dancer means for us, because there's not a word for a dancer. Normally, if you do dabke, they call you dabbik. They don't call you a dancer. So the conservative community that we are living to restricted also us to improve and develop the art, the dancing scene in Palestine. So it's really affected the content so much. Like actually, just by taking a look on the titles of the pieces we made, you can easily notice that is affected by these restrictions. And yeah, and it not only the content. For example, the work itself, we need to prepare very much in advance in kind to know that we can have time and place that we can meet all together and study the political situations, like what is happening. Do they now the borders are open, the checkpoints are open, we have to know all of this. So yeah, it has a major impact on our work.
So acknowledging that huge difference in type of confinement, I wanted to turn to Catherine then, and just asking how you are thinking about the project now. I know you and I have had some discussions about what might it look like in the future.
Well, I mean, everything has changed, and when the festival got cancelled this year, and we were talking about, you know, what it might look like afterwards, it's in one sense it's you can't make it without acknowledging Corona's happened, because the world is going to see everything in a different viewpoint, and of course the situations are completely different, you know, Palestine and Corona. But I think the audience has now some sense of being on lockdown and not being able to see family and not being able to travel. So maybe certain things that you were hoping to try and make an audience experience in a piece, now you don't necessarily need to do that so much, because they know, and you would hope that the empathy might be better, because they know what it feels like on a tiny level. I mean, it's that you can't compare them, as Luca said. But also, you know, with theaters closed and with all the, you know, with the social distancing, you know, you're trying to figure out how in God's name do you make this piece now. But in another sense, it's opening up possibilities, because before, you know, you had a very clear vision of how the show was going to go, and now it's just, well, if we have to use technology, like, you know, we have Amir on the conversation here, does this open us up now to work with more Palestinians in the piece and to involve them more in the devising? You know, before it's, you have the expense and you know, trying to fly everybody over and not knowing whether people get permits, and in the time window that we had originally, you know, from going to Palestine and then I was on tour with another show, it was going to be very difficult to do that. Now I think it opens up possibilities to engage more with folks over there, which I think is a really good thing.
And Amir, just on that note, how do you feel that international collaboration can develop from here now when a lot of us have discovered or have to think differently about how we connect and how we work together? Do you see some opportunities in this?
The confinement becomes something like a common sense. Everyone has been through this experience now in the world, and if we want to talk about this topic, it will open a lot of opportunities because everyone can relate to this topic now, of course differently, but now this feeling of being confined and this feeling of having something that is stronger than you and is threatening your existence is something that we have been living with forever. And now I think the whole world knowing the feeling. So this will open a new opportunities if we want to talk about this topic and this feeling between Palestinians and anyone in the world now. This will make it, we will have the same starting point to start from if we want to work about this topic. Coronavirus is really very less thing if we compare it to the political restriction, especially now because it's getting really intense more and more.
Just turning to Salma here about the situation now that that we're facing and how to continue to develop this piece of work. But I wanted to ask what your thoughts are on working afar digitally in developing the work.
It's possible. I didn't experience it before, like a lot or deep, but I think it's possible if we have like the same point and like we understand each other. But I need to experience it. Again, we go back to the experience to know. So I'm not sure now, but I think it's good to try, like, because I think it's like it's not the only way, but like it's the only way for now to do.
And Vanessa, likewise, you are already sort of afar from your other homeland. So have you had experience of working physically digitally, if you see what I mean?
Yes. Actually, yeah, for my last piece that I have done, my composer or some of the artists that I use, musicians, are from Mexico, and we are back and forth, creating. At the moment, I'm in a creative process as well about Mexican food work, which is as well back and forward. I think, that's a possibility that is open now. For example, now I have to take my training in my room, so I'm taking classes. So yeah, that's in that side. I can click and connect with a concert of traditional music at home in Mexico, and I guess that the door has been opened now. It's just, it's an advantage. It's beautiful. It is good.
Catherine, just returning finally a little bit to the project and you and Luca collaborating on this, and it's about dance and video. I wanted to ask you for this particular project how you are thinking about how you move forward, and if this new bit of time and new circumstances have changed how you consider integrating physicality and image.
Yeah, there was a whole vision for how the piece was going to go, and now that's all changed because the circumstances are all unknown. But what we have done when we went out to Palestine, we didn't go out to shoot a film. We went out to I guess shoot footage that would be incorporated into the live show and to shoot the trailer as well. And when we came back and we weren't able to make the live show, myself and Luca went through the footage and decided to see if could we possibly put something together, put some sort of a film together from what we had, and it's challenging because we didn't set out to do that from the get-go. It was more support material for the live show. But we've gone through probably on our third iteration of it now. And the idea in the absence of the live show yet, is I guess to show a little bit of what we experienced and then the journey and the people and the place. So we're kind of working on that, which we'll hopefully share some footage from at the end of this conversation. And then it's once we've done that, it's okay. As I'm looking at the footage, some things you want to keep for the live show, and some things we'll put into that film. Live performance is what I do, so it would be my preference. But at the same time, you have to plan for alternative, options, which could open up, as I said before, really interesting possibilities of engaging more with Palestine.
And just Luca, finally to you as well about, mixing screen and dance has always been challenging. And do you feel that this discussion that you're now having with Catherine about how to move this project forward, is it opening up new ways of combining the two art forms for you?
It's always really, really interesting and challenging. I hope we're gonna have the chance to have a live performance, and then it's gonna be another chapter that we're gonna open and rework in the images in a completely different way than we are working now to create the documentary. An image in the theater is completely different than an image on the screen.
I just want to ask one final question to Catherine to sum this up and take us back to the project. And I want you to talk a little bit about the title, Floating on a Dead Sea.
Yeah, the title Floating on a Dead Sea, it came actually during a meeting we were having. Actually, I think it was the Irish ambassador to Palestine. And he actually said the title in a conversation, and it was most of the people we talked to, everybody referenced how they weren't able to get to the sea. It came up mostly with the young people everywhere in terms of having to cross walls to try and get to the sea, whether it be the sea over by Haifa or the Dead Sea, which is now cordoned off as an area sea, and it's not so accessible for Palestinians. And when we met the dancers in Nablus, all of them talked about that too in conversation. So this thing of never being able to, your country is surrounded by seas, but you as a Palestinian can't get to them. And for me as an Irish person, I live by the sea, I see the sea every day, and that to me is inconceivable to not be able to get to the sea. And it has this thing of just, you're floating on a dead sea, and it's a thing of they can't move forward. It just feels like people can't move forward with their lives, and people just want to have normal, ordinary lives and get on with it. And it's just really difficult to do something so simple as float on the sea. It's an impossibility to many, and it shouldn't be. So that's kind of where the title came from.
So we're going to be showing you some of the documentary material that Luca has been editing. Catherine, would you mind introducing us to that material?
Yeah, so myself and Luca have been spending the lockdown working on a documentary piece from the footage that we've shot. So what we'll share is kind of an edited down, probably about 18 minutes of part of it. So it's not the full thing in its entirety, which we're still working on, but I guess a flavor of it, about 18 minutes worth. So yeah, enjoy. So there is a real visceral and physical experience, both before going and when you arrive.
Now we are in Palestine. We crossed 2 villages before the city. Villages now.
You don't go with a sense of ease. You're constantly nervous and anxious as to whether you get in or not, and you've done nothing wrong, but yet you still have that innate sense that you mightn't get in. Ramallah is more like a city. It's more cosmopolitan than other places with cafes, bars, and clubs. It's quite relaxed. You feel at ease there.
يلا علبة عقود بخمسة. قالي وداني بنات تفجاجي.
growing, but to be part of a company, it's very complicated and it's really hard. Now I'm doing 3 jobs at the same time just to support myself financially. So it's really frustrating to find the time actually to work on myself and to actually be in the studio in a way. A lot of people abroad, they're seen as dancers, they concentrate on how they move, their kind of technique, their kind of artistic thinking. And I don't consider myself as a dancer in that kind of sense. I believe that I see things in an artistic way. I do a lot of things. I'm not stagnated on the idea of, yeah, I'm a dancer, so this is how I behave, this is how I do, this is how my lifestyle is. Rather than I do sometimes work in a bar, I work as a social worker, I work as fixing phones sometimes. So there's a lot of things, and I can use my surrounding, my environment, a lot of things to share with other people my perspective, or how I understand the world, how I construct it and deconstruct it.
We do have an opportunity more than going abroad. Why? Because there are not much dancers in Palestine in general, and maybe the few dancers could actually one day do something, you know, like we're little, but we could do something bigger.
Farmers here get poor, and farmers there get poor. This is confiscate land, damage, and over there it is damage. Just we have 90% from our land or from our fund, we lost it. Punishing and damaging the Palestinian society, the Palestinian economy, the Palestinian feeling, the Palestinian freedom, the Palestinian humanity, the Palestinian, and that's justice also too. This is what's happened to us from 1967. People even cannot move very well. You know. That's all what we want, to live in peace, and we have a humanity and we have a freedom. That's all we want. But have a look how much we lost.
You walk around Hebron and you see the streets covered in wire meshing to protect Palestinians from trash and worse that's thrown down onto them by the settlers. It's hard to take in.
إلى
Every morning, hundreds of Palestinians who work on the other side of the wall in Jerusalem have to leave their homes at 4 a.m. and they can spend hours waiting in line at checkpoints to cross. It can take some 3 hours to get to work, and they have to repeat this every day, day after day. They also have to pay for a permit to work there, and this can cost an average of €500 a month.
My name is Ragd. I'm 15 years old. I live in Aida camp. I'm a refugee from Ajur village. Dancing dabka, in my opinion, it's one kind of resisting the Israeli occupation. It's very hard to live under occupation in Aida camp because Aida camp is surrounded by 6 military tower and also a apartheid wall. So it's very difficult to react with this life because the Israel occupation all the time enter our homes in the midnight. They arrested the children, the parents, the boys, and also the girls. When I come to Lajee Center to dance and also to play music, I feel very happy and very strong because even if we have an occupation, we dance, we play music to send a message to the world. Even if we have an occupation, but we are strong. Our children are strong and we want to have a good culture to face the occupation. We want to face them with our culture. My hopes in the future, maybe I will study medicine. One of my reasons to study medicine is exact the child doctor, because the Israel soldier shoot the children especially, and I want to try to treat them, to save their life.
طبعا في مشاكل في السجن. انا بحكي في الجانب المعنوي والجانب النفسي، لكن انه في الجانب الجسدي والجانب المرضي اكيد بيكون في اشي انت بتتألم، لانه لا يمكن يكون معقول للانسان انه يقدر يقعد على حجر 40 ساعة 50 ساعة بدون ألم. طبعا بيكون في عنا مشاكل في الأرجل، بيكون عنا مشاكل في الإيدين عشان الإيدين بتكون مربوطة للخلف، فأنت بعد يومين ثلاثة بتصير إيدك هاي ما بتحس في إيدك، بتفكر إيدك ورا، مش ممكن أنت بدك تستعملها قدام بس بتفكرها ورا. فبكون عندك هون مشاكل في الايدين وبكون عندك مشاكل في الارجل، تاخذ وقت لما ترجع انت للحاله الطبيعيه. طبعا هذا بيكون هو اكيد في الام وفي تعب، بس انت بيكون بفكرك لا بدي اتحمل الالم، لانه انا لازم في اشي احفظه، لازم في اشي ما اقدمه هديه لانه اجري بتوجعني او لانه كتفي بوجعني. فالالم موجود والمعاناه موجوده، بس الفكره اكبر من الالم والمعاناه.
There's a lot of things that we've been really suffering, and I think that this dance got a lot of weight out of my shoulders. It was a really nice way to get everything from you out. Try to forget about everything, forget about the whole world.
For me as a dancer, I find, like I always say it, I find my freedom in my dancing. I think everyone took this way because they find their freedom in this kind of movement or this kind of dance or this kind of art, let's say.
You can describe something that you feel, and for me I've been like really suffering because I used to work in Jaffa and getting in like illegally there, so I'm just living like the situation when I feel humiliation when I get from the borders or just climbing the wall to get in there, so I just can like remember that situation and put it in my dance in my own way.
We have many pressures since we grow up, since we were child, and that affects our body like and our mind. But like I found it like if I were in a different situation, maybe I'm not gonna be a dancer. I used that situation like when I feel really under the pressure and the stuff, I go like to practice. Like I feel all of my energy like goes out like in a good way.
Sometimes I feel this kind of sensation of stagnated somehow or stuck in certain positions in my body. But at the same time, this kind of limitation, as Uba said, it produces something. While like it creates some sort of a need for you that I need to do this in order to feel better about myself or about my reality or about my life somehow. While if I have everything, then there's nothing to talk about. When I see the guys, I can relate to their story, understand what kind of background they come from or why they're doing this, why they have this kind of need to come and move.
I'm so grateful to be as a Palestinian, and so grateful that I've been under this situation, that it makes me stronger. That I've been, when I was a child, I've been questioned and I've been hit, I've been put in the jail without no reasons, just because I'm born here. Because I'm born in Jerusalem and I lived here, and no one did choose this life for me. My dream is to end this like miserable life for us and live as a free people, without thinking that we have to leave because we cannot find peace in our homelands, in our houses. So we cannot think about our families, and I don't want to get a child because I don't want him to have the same miserable life that I had. This is my dream.